All right, so today we're going to unpack something a little spooky.
Spooky.
Yeah, we're taking a deep dive into the shadowy world of the Boogeyman
Ooh.
and exploring how his story intertwines with the traditions of Halloween.
I think what's so interesting about this is that
Yeah.
both the Boogeyman and Halloween itself tap into our deepest fears about the unknown,
Right.
especially when it comes to death
Exactly.
and the afterlife.
It's true. We often think of Halloween as
Oh, okay.
this fun, lighthearted holiday, but
Yeah.
it has surprisingly deep roots in, Christian and even older Celtic traditions.
Absolutely. It's the eve of All Hallows Day,
Hmm.
or All Saints Day, which falls on November 1st.
Okay.
It marks the beginning of All Hallowtide.
All Hallowtide.
Yeah, it's this 3-day period
Okay.
in Western Christianity
Okay.
dedicated to honoring saints and remembering those who've passed on.
So Halloween is like a bridge between the worlds of the living and the dead,
Yeah.
which makes the connection to the Boogeyman even more intriguing. Could he be a manifestation of our anxieties about what lies beyond?
It's certainly a thought, right? Like
Yeah.
many cultures throughout history
Yeah.
have believed that the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest around this time of year.
Hmm.
They developed rituals to appease the spirits, like leaving out food and offerings.
Oh, wow.
Some of these themes are still present in Halloween traditions today.
It's fascinating.
Isn't it?
And that brings us to the history of Halloween costumes.
Yeah.
I was surprised to learn that in the Middle Ages, people would dress up as saints,
Oh, yeah.
especially in churches that couldn't afford to display relics.
Right. It was a way of
Yeah.
making the saints more present, more tangible.
I see.
But later on, the purpose of costumes shifted dramatically.
Oh, really?
People started wearing them to protect themselves from vengeful spirits.
So interesting.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating contrast.
Yeah.
It seems like there's this constant push and pull
Right.
between honoring the dead and fearing them, which is reflected in both costumes and the Boogeyman.
Precisely. Costumes might represent an attempt to control fear through disguise and ritual.
I see.
The Boogeyman, on the other hand, embodies fear itself,
Okay.
making it external and giving it a name.
So it's almost like both are ways of managing those deep-seated anxieties,
Yeah.
particularly around a time associated with the supernatural.
Right.
But what about the story of Stingy Jack
Stingy Jack.
and how that ties into all of this?
Yeah, he's a classic example of what can happen when you try to outsmart the devil.
Right, tricking the devil, never a good idea.
No, never.
And as a result, poor Jack gets denied entry to both heaven and hell.
Condemned to wander the earth for eternity,
Oh.
with only a burning coal inside a hollowed-out turnip to light his way.
Oh, wow.
That image definitely captures the spooky spirit of Halloween.
It does, and it makes me think about the Boogeyman
Yeah.
and how he, like Stingy Jack, is often depicted as this restless, wandering figure,
Right.
forever on the move.
That's a great observation. Like, both are figures who exist on the fringes,
Yeah.
caught between worlds, unable to find peace.
Hmm.
Perhaps the Boogeyman, often seen as a punisher of bad behavior,
Yeah.
represents a distorted version of a soul like Stingy Jack,
Oh.
condemned to wander for their actions in life. Yeah, it's like they become these cautionary tales
Right.
woven into the fabric of Halloween.
Hmm.
Reminders of what could happen if we stray too far from the rules,
I see.
whether they're about good behavior or respecting the spiritual world.
It's almost like the Boogeyman serves as a kind of shadow side
Yeah?
to Halloween itself.
Mm.
We have the celebration, the remembrance,
Mm.
but there's also that underlying current of fear
Yeah.
and uncertainty about what might be lurking just beyond our sight.
And I think that's a universal human experience,
Right.
regardless of culture or time period.
Yeah.
We're drawn to the mysteries of the unseen world, even as we fear them.
This makes me think about how we create the very monsters that haunt our imaginations.
Right.
Could it be that the Boogeyman is, in a sense, a part of us?
Hmm.
A manifestation of our own fears, given shape?
That's fascinating. The idea of the Boogeyman as a psychological archetype,
Right.
a symbol that emerges from our collective unconscious. He represents something primal and deeply rooted in our psyche.
So you're saying the more we believe in him,
Yeah.
the more real he becomes in a way.
Not necessarily literally, of course.
Right.
But the more we invest in this idea of the Boogeyman, the more power we give him.
Yeah.
After all, he's shaped by our cultural beliefs,
Mm.
our anxieties, our deepest fears.
So he's not just some random monster under the bed,
Right?
but rather a reflection of something much deeper
Exactly.
within ourselves.
When you think about it,
Yeah.
we do a lot to reinforce those fears, especially around Halloween.
Right?
Like, we choose costumes that tap into our darkest fantasies. We tell each other scary stories,
Yeah.
Send shivers down our spines.
It almost seems like we enjoy being scared, at least within the safe confines of a holiday like Halloween.
Perhaps it's a way of confronting those fears, right?
Yeah.
Of making them less powerful by giving them a form we can recognize. And to some extent control.
It's like the thrill of a roller coaster or a scary movie.
Right.
We know it's not real,
Exactly.
but we still get that rush from the adrenaline.
And by experiencing those fears in a controlled environment,
Yeah.
we might be able to better cope with the anxieties we face in everyday life.
So Halloween and the Boogeyman,
Right.
despite their spooky nature,
Yeah.
actually offer us a valuable opportunity for introspection and self-discovery.
It encourages us to examine our relationship with fear, with the unknown,
Right.
and with our own mortality.
Yeah.
These are themes that have fascinated and frightened humanity for centuries.
And perhaps by exploring these themes,
All right.
we can learn to embrace the darkness, to
Yeah.
see it not just as something to be feared, but as a necessary part of the human experience.
After all, it's often in the shadows that we find our greatest strength, our resilience,
Right.
and our capacity for growth.
So as we're wrapping up here,
Yeah.
what are some key takeaways from our deep dive into the Boogeyman?
Well, I think it really challenges us to look beyond the surface of Halloween,
Right.
the costumes and the candy, and appreciate its rich history and deeper symbolism.
Yeah, I think it definitely makes you think about the holiday in a whole new light.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It also prompts us to kind of, reflect on our own relationship with fear,
Right.
with the unknown, and to recognize that the Boogeyman, while he's a frightening figure,
Yeah.
ultimately represents our anxieties projected outwards.
He's almost like a mirror reflecting our deepest fears back at us.
Exactly. And by understanding the Boogeyman
Yeah.
and his connection to Halloween, we can perhaps take away some of his power.
It's true. Maybe that's the real trick of Halloween.
Yeah.
We confront our fears and turn them into something we can understand and even laugh at.
Exactly. To see the humor and the absurdity in some of our deepest fears.
Yeah.
After all, Halloween is a time for fun and celebration as well.
That's true.
Yeah.
And a reminder that even in the face of the unknown,
Yeah.
even in the presence of things that might scare us, there's always room for joy and laughter.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful thought, and perhaps that's the most important lesson of all.
Yeah.
That even in the darkness,
Right.
even when that veil between worlds feels thin,
Yeah.
there's always a glimmer of hope and light to guide us.
That's a great thought to end on.
It is.
Well, thanks for joining us for this spooky deep dive.
My pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious. And remember,
Yes.
the Boogeyman is only as real as we make him.